He was not created within the context of human relationships. The first thing God gave Adam was responsibility. First thing. Here's the garden. Take care of it. Here are the animals. Name them. And that was a task. Because he wasn't just calling them Spot and Dino. He had to actually evaluate them based upon their function and their category and give them a name appropriate to their role in the ecosystem. So it was an intensive process. So what are the qualities of a responsible man? The same things that give a man swag and the same things a woman is looking for in a man. Maturity, decisiveness, consistency, strength. Maturity doesn't begin with age. So you can be 40 and 50 and 60 and still be immature. It begins with the acceptance of responsibility. Here's the second quote from the book. We don't begin to mature until we accept personal responsibility for our words, our thoughts, our motives, and our attitudes. Personal responsibility for what's happening in here. All this right here, that's me. I'm owning that. I'm owning that. My thoughts, that's me. Words, that's me. Actions, that's me. That's all me. Everything I did, I own. That's the beginning of maturity. Because men are under a lot of stress that's difficult for people to comprehend. Because there's an expectation on us, but a lot of us don't get taught these things. And the thing with men is that they don't tell you this. They just fake it to make it. We got to put on a front. We got to act like we got our gimmicks, and we can hide behind talent, behind charisma, behind attractiveness, and clean cut. I mean, you were like, hey, man, he got it together. That's just a gimmick. And he works his gimmick, and he can get things out of his gimmick because it's easier to do it with the gimmick than to actually be mature. But the problem is, well, why does he just say so? Because we get thrown under the bus when we say we're weak. The men get on our case. The other brothers get on, and the women get on our case. Don't you know? You should know by now. Didn't people raise you right? And you be like, actually, no. You gonna teach me? So there's not a space for men to be open and honest without being shamed. Responsibility does not mean shame-worthy or blame-worthy or guilt-worthy. It's this. It means able to respond. Literally, that's what response able. Able to respond. So you may have had a hard life, but guess what? You're a man. You are able to respond. You want to respond with God's ability and not your ability. When Adam found out his wife ate the fruit, he should have been like, my wife is about to die. She just poisoned herself. God, what can we do about this? I mean, I know what the rule is. I get it. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but help me. And what Dr. Bernard puts in another book he wrote, another essay he wrote, is that Adam should have been prepared to die for his wife. That's what he should have done. He hadn't eaten the fruit yet. And I imagine if he had gone to God, my take on it is God would have told him, you got to die, and you bear the brunt of her sin so she can live. Is that not what Paul tells husbands and wives in the book of Ephesians? That men are to love their wives as Christ loved the church who died for it? God would have raised him up. He would have raised him up. He would have told the same thing to Adam that he told Jesus. Do you love me? Do you trust me? I got you, son. I got you. You're going to die, but you're going to live. But instead of seeing the scope of his responsibility beyond himself, because responsibility is, well, let me get it in here. Let me say this. Responsibility begins from the inside out, not the outside in. Responsibility begins by looking inward, but is not complete until we also start looking outward. Right. Amen. A real man is constantly expanding his scope of responsibility. Why? Because if you ask yourself, how many things can I respond to? I didn't make that mess. I didn't do that. What that got to do with me? If it's in terms of blame and guilt and shame, nothing. But if in terms of responsibility, what can you do? You are what? Able to respond. Amen. Even if it ain't your mess that you personally did. A man with a sense of responsibility expands the scope. And he says, somehow in his mind, he says, I'm responsible for that. I didn't do it, but I'm responsible.